They laughed. In smoky bunkers deep inside occupied France, German generals chuckled at the idea that American soldiers, those soft civilians in uniform, could sustain a real war. "Give them a month," one officer reportedly sneered, "and their tanks will stop for lack of fuel." But within weeks, those same men watched in disbelief as Allied columns tore across France at a speed no army in history had ever achieved. Behind them roared an endless river of trucks, a mechanical artery so vast, so relentless, that even the Luftwaffe couldn't cut it. It was called the Red Ball Express, a 24-hour lifeline that moved 500,000 tons of supplies across liberated Europe. A convoy so fast and ferocious, it turned Patton's Third Army into a rolling storm. By the time German intelligence realized what was happening, it was too late. The Americans had built something no one had seen before, a logistics weapon so efficient it became unstoppable. And it all began because the U.S. Army was desperate. Before D-Day, German officers were confident, even smug. They respected Britain's discipline, feared Russia's manpower, but mocked American logistics. To them, America was a land of consumers, not conquerors, a nation of automobiles and refrigerators, not tanks and artillery. In the words of German General Franz Halder, recorded in his diary during early 1944, "The Americans are amateurs at war. They lack the organization for sustained operations." It was an arrogance born from experience. In 1940, German blitzkrieg had crushed France with terrifying speed. Their supply lines worked, at least for short, brutal campaigns. They believed the same model would outlast any Allied advance. But Hitler's high command overlooked one fatal truth. America's industrial might wasn't just about producing weapons. It was about moving them. Factories could pour out thousands of tanks and trucks, but the real genius lay in how fast those machines could reach the front. And soon, that civilian softness the Germans mocked would manifest as the most ruthless logistical network ever assembled. June 1944. The beaches of Normandy are secure. The Allies have broken out from the hedgerows and are driving east. But victory brings a new nightmare. By August, Patton's tanks are racing toward Paris, and suddenly, they're out of fuel. Each Sherman burns nearly 800 liters a day, and supply dumps near the coast are over 400 miles behind. The French railways? Bombed. Bridges? Blown apart. The Germans had scorched everything behind them. For the first time since D-Day, the Allied juggernaut risked grinding to a halt. Patton raged in frustration, telling his staff, "My men can eat their belts, but my tanks have gotta have gas." The Allied command knew the truth. If they stopped moving, Germany would regroup, and the war could drag on for years. A miracle was needed. That miracle came from an idea so absurd it sounded suicidal. A convoy system running day and night with no rest, from Normandy to the front lines. The Red Ball Express. In late August 1944, the U.S. Army Transportation Corps was ordered to create a non-stop supply line across war-torn France. No railroads, no infrastructure, just trucks, thousands of them. They commandeered every available vehicle, GMC deuce and a half, 2.5-ton trucks, jeeps, tankers, even ambulances converted to fuel carriers. To mark their route, they painted red circles on road signs, the symbol of priority traffic. No one else could use it. Within 36 hours, the Red Ball Express was operational. It stretched from Normandy's ports to Patton's front, a 700-kilometer artery pulsing with over 6,000 trucks running around the clock. Each carried ammunition, food, and, most crucially, fuel. The system's heartbeat was human. 75% of the drivers were African-American soldiers from segregated units, many of whom had never been given combat roles. Now, they were the backbone of the Allied advance. They called it hell on wheels without the guns. Mud, darkness, constant Luftwaffe raids. But still, the trucks rolled. Their motto? Keep 'em rolling, or Patton stops. For the German High Command, the numbers coming out of Allied reconnaissance reports didn't make sense. How could one army, barely 3 months after D-Day, be consuming and replacing 700,000 gallons of fuel every single day? The scale of it was industrial insanity. Each of Patton's armored divisions required over 350 tons of supplies daily, and the Red Ball Express was delivering 4 times that just to keep the front moving. By September 1944, over 23,000 truck drivers were running 5,958 vehicles non-stop across 2 parallel highways. The convoy never slept. At any given moment, there were trucks spaced exactly 50 yards apart, headlights off, rumbling through blackout nights from dusk till dawn. One broken-down vehicle could cause a 10-mile jam, so stranded drivers learned to push dead trucks off the road themselves. Every wasted minute meant stalled tanks, grounded aircraft, and an opportunity for German counterattack. Yet somehow they pulled it off. In just 82 days, the Red Ball Express moved over 412,000 tons of supplies, enough to equip entire armies and feed millions. That single system consumed 300,000 gallons of fuel per day just for the trucks. But it also delivered enough fuel to multiply the Allies' firepower tenfold. Even the German general staff, buried in the chaos of retreat, noticed the impossible pace. One Wehrmacht officer recorded in disbelief, "Their vehicles never stop. Their roads never rest." The joke that Americans were good only at building cars was no longer funny. Those same cars, reborn as army trucks, were now rolling the Reich into ruin. Every Red Ball Express driver knew the risks. They weren't infantry, but their battlefield was the open road, exposed, unarmored, and always moving. Luftwaffe strafing runs were constant. The roads were cratered with bomb holes, choked with mud, or slick with oil. Drivers often ran 20-hour shifts, sleeping for minutes at a time, eating cold rations while steering. If they slowed down, Patton's divisions starved. If they stopped, entire offensives stalled. Private Ernie Pyle later wrote, "The real heroes of this war are the boys who drive by night and never make headlines." They raced without headlights to avoid enemy aircraft. They marked curves with luminous paint. Sometimes they'd navigate by the faint glow of cigarette tips in the darkness ahead. And it wasn't just exhaustion. It was pride. These were soldiers who had been told they'd never see combat. Now, their work was literally fueling victory. An African-American driver from the 3640th Quartermaster Truck Company recalled, "We might not carry rifles, but we carried the firepower." The Red Ball wasn't glamorous. It was dirty, dangerous, and deadly. Yet it was the artery that kept Europe's liberation alive. By autumn 1944, the German High Command finally understood what they were up against. Their blitzkrieg had relied on short, fast strikes. The Red Ball Express had invented a permanent blitzkrieg. German fuel convoys were paralyzed by Allied bombers, trains destroyed, fuel depots burning. Meanwhile, the Americans seemed immune to logistical limits. Even Hitler demanded explanations. According to excerpts from Alfred Jodel's war diary, he complained, "They drive as if the world itself refuels them." Franz Halder, reviewing reports post-war, admitted, "We had underestimated their industry, and therefore their endurance." The Wehrmacht had run on steel and fear. The Americans ran on gasoline, and they never ran out. Every advancing tank column, every artillery barrage, every liberated city, all of it traced back to those tireless convoys on bombed-out French roads. The Red Ball Express didn't just move supplies, it moved history. While other Allied armies inched forward cautiously, Patton's Third Army tore across France like lightning. But behind that lightning was fuel, and behind that fuel was the Red Ball Express. Every shell fired, every tank engine roaring through the French countryside was a direct result of those convoys. In early September 1944, Patton's tanks were advancing 60 miles a day, a speed that stunned even his own staff officers. His operations chief later said, "We were fighting a war of motion. Red Ball kept that motion alive." The system became so efficient that Patton's men began calling their fuel Red Ball gas. Convoy drivers joked that Patton didn't need maps, just gas cans. When the Germans tried to regroup at the Seine, Patton's forces smashed through them before they could organize. The Red Ball had delivered enough fuel and ammunition to make sure his advance never slowed. Paris was liberated. The German line collapsed. By late September, Allied spearheads had reached the German border itself, all because 6,000 trucks refused to stop rolling. To the Germans, it looked like magic, an unstoppable industrial river that simply could not dry up. To the Americans, it was grueling, sleepless, mechanical precision. And even when the autumn rains turned roads into rivers of mud, the express never stopped. One trucker's diary entry summed it up best. "The front moves because we do." When the war finally ended, the Red Ball Express faded quietly into history. There were no medals, no parades, no monuments. But among the soldiers who lived through it, both white and black, there was one shared understanding. Without them, the Blitz would have died in the mud of Normandy. In total, the Red Ball Express moved 412,193 tons of supplies across France and Belgium in less than 3 months. That's the weight of more than 60 Eiffel Towers, delivered entirely by truck. German generals who once laughed at American logistics later admitted they had completely misunderstood industrial warfare. Halder's post-war notes summed it up with reluctant respect. They fought with engines, not soldiers. We could not compete with their roads. The Red Ball Express didn't just fuel Patton's tanks. It proved that logistics win wars. It turned mockery into fear, and fear into defeat. And it showed the world that America's greatest weapon in World War II wasn't just its firepower. It was its ability to move faster, farther, and harder than anyone else on Earth. The German generals thought victory depended on courage and cunning. But they never understood the real equation of modern war. No fuel, no fight. The Red Ball Express turned gasoline into victory, and laughter into silence. If you want more forgotten stories like this, the untold engines that powered World War II, subscribe to WWII Declassified, because behind every battlefield legend, there's a machine that made it possible.